Good afternoon, everyone. Can someone tell me whether my voice is clear and is this screen clearly visible to all of you? Check. So welcome to today's session, and today we'll be doing current affairs from 28th to 29th February. Okay, in this manner we are at least on point with respect to current affairs. Okay. So again, let's start with ESI and finance only. So first news is regarding the number of ultra high net worth individuals in the country. Okay. So this is the report that has been released by Knight Frank Institution. Okay. The report name is the Wealth Report 2024. Okay. In this report, it says that there has been reported an increase in the number of ultra high net worth individuals in the country, especially in India. It increased by 6%. Okay, so such type of news are usually important, especially in context of phase 1 GA. ठीक है, तो उस हिसाब से आप लोग इसका डेटा याद करके रखिए. ये 6% का ओवरऑल एनुअल improvement in India with respect to ultra high net worth individuals, and they also have forecasted that what's the number of ultra high net worth individuals will be, especially in going forward to 2028. So this data of 6% and the criteria of how do you categorize an ultra high net worth individual. It says the net worth of having $30 million or more. Okay. And then what's the projected growth? The projected growth is that it will increase to up to 20,000, the number of ultra high net worth individuals by 2028 in India. ठीक है, तो ये सारा ये तीन डेटा एटलीस्ट आपको पता होना चाहिए. And if I ask you, all of you, as a lot of you were facing difficulties in respect to, let's say, connecting various news to various different topics. So what do you think this news you can relate to any descriptive topic in ESI? Anyone? Where can you use this data? इनकम इनइक्वालिटी. यस, वेरी बढ़िया. ठीक है, तो इनकम इनइक्वालिटी, social justice, economic justice, and all those things, you can always make sure to write this data in context of what's the situation of income inequality is there in the country, and always you can quote this data that how much, and obviously you can compare this data with other countries ki other countries में ये growth rate कितना है as compared to India, so you can also have a positive aspect to this. ठीक है, for example, if in some country the growth rate with respect to ultra high net worth individuals is higher than India, तो आप इसको positively भी दिखा सकते हो कि in India the income inequality is not growing as much as there is in developed countries. ठीक है, is this clear? Now let's move on to next news. Next is RBI's revision of norms for regulatory sandbox scheme. Okay, what's the revised norm? The revised norm is participating entities in the scheme are now required to comply with digital personal data protection norms. So as all of you know, the data protection bill have already arrived in the country, and there are various regulations with respect to that, and all the entities that will be utilizing regulatory body scheme shall comply with all the norms that are there with respect to personal data protection. So what regulatory sandbox scheme is all about? Can anybody tell? यस मैंने करेक्ट. ठीक है, तो इसमें ऑब्वियसली यही चीज़ है that regulatory sandbox allows various fintech companies to test their product on historical and real-time data provided under regulatory sandbox. कि आप बाहर अपना प्रोडक्ट निकालने से पहले टेस्ट कर लीजिए कि हाउ विल योर प्रोडक्ट फेयर डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द डेटा that is present with the Reserve Bank of India in real time. Okay, so if any entity want to utilize this scheme, they need to conform with personal data protection norms. Next is India at Ministerial Conference, 13th Ministerial Conference of WTO. Okay, so it is in this context, obviously there are various discussions that are currently going on. देखो स्टैटिक चीज़ें तो आप वैसे भी याद करके रखिए दैट इट इज़ हैपनिंग इन अबू धाबी. इट इज़ 13th मिनिस्ट्रियल कॉन्फ्रेंस. ओके, बट वन थिंग आई विल डू, आई विल मेक अ सेपरेट वीडियो फॉर WTO 13th मिनिस्ट्रियल कॉन्फ्रेंस. ठीक है, वेयर वी विल बी डिस्कसिंग एवरी अग्रीमेंट दैट हैव बीन डिस्कस्ड or that have been agreed upon in the 13th ministerial conference, and apart from that obviously we will be discussing about what are the India's issues and India's stance with respect to all these agreements. Okay, but let's discuss what has been there. So discussions at ministerial conferences have been including dispute settlement, development final outcome documents, and issues related to developing countries. As you can see that India continuously reiterated its position on expiration of moratorium on taxation of border or e-commerce transactions. Okay. Next is India and South Africa block investment deal at WTO, and this is nothing but China investment deal, which we were discussing in the previous class only. So what was that deal's name? The deal name was Investment Facilitation for Development. Okay, so in this context we already know that. Can anybody tell me what was the major issue that Indian government was telling us in context of this? What Indian government main position was with respect to this? Matthew says it's outside the purview of WTO. PDF आपको कोर्स में मिलेगा. Threat to multilateral order of WTO. बहुत बढ़िया. Yes. So as all of us know that whatever decisions that are taken in WTO are usually taken in context of or via consensus. That means everybody agrees upon it. Okay, and most of the agreements that are there in WTO are usually multilateral agreements. But even though WTO agreement provides for plurilateral agreements, but naturally this goes against the principle of multilateralism as well as the consensus based decision making. ठीक है, अब ये सारी चीजें आपको डिस्क्रिप्टिव में लिखनी पड़ेगी. ठीक है, what was India's stance and these keywords. ठीक है, that's why I am keeping, I'm continuously asking you what were the reasons or what were the position of India with respect to various agreements that have been talked about at least in this ministerial conference. Next is RBI has imposed penalty of 66 lakh rupees on City Union Bank Limited. The reasons for penalty, obviously non-compliance towards various norms regarding income recognition, asset classification, provisioning and various. बहुत सारी जगह पे इन्होंने compliance नहीं किए follow. GDP growth slows to 6.7% in third quarter as compared to 7.6 in the previous quarter. So this is the news which I was telling all of you about. ठीक है, मैंने आप लोगों से कहा था कि even though CRISIL report is telling you about the forecast with respect to what's the growth rate will be in the third quarter, but that thing will naturally be provided in reality towards you by the NSO data, which consequently provides you GDP data after 2 month lag. So quarter 3 का data, you will be getting after 2 months, that means February end, and this is the data provided by NSO. और इस डेटा को याद करके रखना, एग्जाम के जस्ट पास में है. ठीक है, so 6.7% growth rate in third quarter. And what's the projection for GDP? Ranged from 6 to 7.3%. ठीक है, RBI projection is 7% as provided to you by RBI governor in monetary policy committee meeting, है ना? So this is what the news is all about. Next is WTO adopts new services rules pact. ठीक है, in this the pact aims at lowering trade cost estimated to be about $150 billion per year. So in this, naturally there are various obligations under GATS. These obligations are related to most favored nation. ठीक है, all nations will not apply non-discriminatory tariffs. So these are basic obligations. But इसके साथ साथ if countries have to put various other obligations, for example, ठीक है, कि providing special treatment to everyone and providing national treatment like situation more. So these are what you call further obligations. So under General Agreement on Trade and Services, these further obligations have been accepted by 72 nations. Okay, and this is what has been agreed or what has been the new service agreement being talked about. Okay, and these are the some little bit details, static details that you are continuously reading since the past week. Next is consolidation expected in asset reconstruction companies segment. Asset reconstruction company, how many of you are aware of it? What do you mean by asset reconstruction company? Anyone? Some says buy NPA, some says recover NPA. तो आप दोनों तो मेरे को इसके functions बता रहे हो, which is not wrong, which is also correct. But what was the need to start these asset reconstruction companies? मतलब इनकी जरूरत क्या पड़ गई? Anyone? Why do you think these asset reconstruction companies were essential to start in the economy? बहुत बढ़िया. Very good, both of you. So that banks can, improve their balance sheet and focus on their core operations, which is lending, which was earlier stopped by huge pileup of NPS. ठीक है. अब आपको पता ही है, recently we've studied in master circular on UCBs also, as you've already noticed that there were various restrictions provided to UCBs, that whatever limitations they were imposed, ठीक है, or whatever allowance that they were allowed were only possible to them if they are financially sound and well managed. ठीक है. And what are the criteria with respect to gross and net NPA within that segment? Does anyone remember? When you talk about financially sound and well managed UCBs, what's the criteria with respect to gross NPA and net NPA that these banks need to achieve? 3% net है, gross 7% है. ठीक है. तो नेचुरली इफ एनी बैंक, अगर उसके पास 10% का पाइलअप है with respect to gross NPA and 5% net NPA, so naturally they will not be able to do their core operations, which is lending. ठीक है. Because now they will be put under restrictions by Reserve Bank of India. But what if this bank can sell 5% of their NPA to an asset reconstruction company? ठीक है. Now the asset reconstruction company will provide, let's say, 15% cash and 85% security receipts. तो एटलीस्ट बैंक की बैलेंस शीट में तो केवल 5% NPA बचेगा. Now they are within the ambit of financially sound and well management companies. Okay, now they can do their operations without attracting RBI too much regulation. ठीक है. So that's what the genesis of asset reconstruction companies were for. And as all of you know that we in the country were having twin balance sheet problem, or twin deficit, twin balance sheet problem, where even the banks as well as the corporates balance sheet were facing with huge debts. ठीक है. So naturally you understand that how much asset reconstruction companies were important. So even Reserve Bank of India came and says, now that ARCs are coming in large number in the country, let's make regulations with respect to that. ठीक है. So in order for any entity to start an asset reconstruction company, Reserve Bank of India put some restrictions that your net owned fund requirement for any asset reconstruction company to operate, it should be minimum 200 CR. Okay. And RBI obviously gave you a timeline that by March 2025, okay, and by March 2024, you need to increase your asset or net owned funds from 200 crores and up to 300 crores by March 2025. ठीक है. But if you are talking about some big banks, so they can easily achieve this. But for small companies, they are not able to collect this much amount of net owned funds with themselves. So obviously they cannot operate in this business. So that's why they are saying that around 40% of ARCs are still below this threshold. Now in this case scenario, what will happen? Obviously, अगर मान लीजिए इसमें से 30%, if they are not able to fulfill this criteria, they will not operate. तो ये तो बंद पड़ जाएंगे. ठीक है. फिर there will be only big dominant companies or big dominant asset reconstruction companies. That's why the news is saying कि consolidation is expected in this segment. ठीक है. Next is an SBI report that has taken data with respect to household consumption expenditure survey. ठीक है. तो household expenditure, household consumption expenditure survey के context में, as all of you know that the data, and in the previous news also we've seen that Niti Aayog chief was talking about that if you look at the data of household consumption expenditure survey, on the basis of that data you can see that the amount of people that are below poverty line continues to remain only up to 5.5%. उतना बैठ रहा है. So that same thing is being also told by an SBI report, ठीक है, which says that poverty levels in India have significantly decreased in the past decade, now estimated to be around 4.5 to 5%. Okay, and the data which they have taken is household consumption expenditure survey. Okay, and why is it so? Because they are now considering the poverty line as this 1622 in rural areas and 1929 in urban areas. Okay, and by considering this poverty line, so naturally you will be getting only less number of people below poverty line. That's why the report is saying that 4.5 to 5% is the new poverty line. और उसी चीज को आप लोग याद करके रखना that this is what the SBI report is saying, 4.5 to 5%, and this new poverty line. Next is with respect to G20 working group meeting are going on, in which they are discussing about what's the global economic situation is currently going on and how it is actually faring right now. So you can see that G20 finance chief expressed optimism about the global economy. They are saying that we are on path of achieving soft landing, attributing it to faster than expected disinflation. So how do you distinguish between disinflation and deflation? Everyone, if I ask you, what's the difference between disinflation, deflation? Yes, correct. So disinflation क्या हो गया? The growth rate of price increase, if that starts to decline, this is what you call disinflation. But if your prices start to decline, absolute prices, वो decline करना start हो जाए, that will be deflation. ठीक है, तो for example, let's say if any commodity's price is 5 rupees, ठीक है, next quarter the price becomes 10, but the next quarter the price becomes, let's say, 15. So how much the price increase is there? 100%. And here how much the price increase? 50%. That means the growth rate is decreasing. So this is what you call disinflation. Okay? But in this case, if the commodities price next year or next quarter, in absolute terms it reduces, this is what you call deflation. Okay? Is this clear to everyone? Chalo. So you can see, so there what they are saying is that we are achieving faster than expected disinflation. That means the growth rate of inflation has been reducing, and naturally the inflation will peak and will start declining. Okay? And what's the International Monetary Fund's forecast with respect to economic growth is 3.1%. They are also positive with respect to the global economic growth. Next is SEBI to address concerns of alternative investment funds. Okay? So alternative investment funds we've done ample amount of times, and this news is obviously about proposal stage. Okay? In which, with respect to various things, for example, and this was one of the news that we've discussed previously, which says that recent consultation paper aims to address concerns with some relaxation already decided, such as allowing equity pledging by alternative investment funds for borrowing by infrastructure companies. Okay? कि मतलब infrastructure companies, if they need to borrow from alternative investment funds, they can pledge their equity to them. Okay? Such type of things are allowed. And they are also talking about addressing issues like evergreening of loans. Evergreening of loans means that you continue to increase the tenure of the loan. ठीक है? अगर अभी default कर रहे हैं, for example, that your loan is, let's say, 6%, 20 years, but by the time the loan completion period is coming, you increase it to, let's say, 7%, 25 years. ऐसे कर दिया आपने, बढ़ाते जा रहे हो. Other frameworks, for example, obligations for key management personnel, fund managers, explicit mention of regulatory compliance. Okay, and even other plans to present regulatory changes to the board. So these are the things that the SEBI is right now concerned about, or SEBI is trying to provide solutions to the alternative investment fund sector. ठीक है, तो जिसमें जब कुछ concrete आएगा, ठीक है, then we will discuss it over then. Next is disclosure requirements for small and mid cap funds. So what does SEBI say? Small and mid cap funds, naturally they are talking about the mutual funds that are offering, or funds to the various investors, and the funds that these mutual fund companies will be collecting, those will be utilized to invest in small cap and mid cap companies. Okay? So when you invest in small cap and mid cap companies, as you also understand, the volatility is also very high. Okay? So it may happen that whenever the huge crash comes in Nifty, so your portfolio also comes down substantially. So it is in such case scenario, the SEBI is saying you should be making your investors aware about that these kind of situations can happen. Okay? And such type of disclosures you need to mention to the investor. And apart from that, you should also focus on stress tests and liquidity management to ensure investor protection. ऐसा ना हो कि कोई crash आए निफ्टी में, for example, let's say 15 to 20% का crash आ गया और आपका फंड ही गायब हो गया. ठीक है, ऐसा भी नहीं होना चाहिए कि आपकी लिक्विडिटी खत्म हो जाए. तो आपको हमेशा स्ट्रेस टेस्ट करते रहने चाहिए. Where do you find the concept of stress tests? In any RBI report? Have you seen in any RBI report the concepts like stress tests? Anyone? आप लोग अगर फाइनेंशियल स्टेबिलिटी रिपोर्ट पढ़ोगे तो देयर यू विल फाइंड द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ स्ट्रेस टेस्ट. मतलब हाउ डज एन रेगुलेटरी बॉडी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इंश्योर्स दैट योर फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम इज स्टेबल. उस पर टेस्ट करेंगे ना, देन ओनली दे विल अंडरस्टैंड दैट इवन इफ you put the economy on stress levels of different magnitude, okay, even in those case scenarios the economy is still performing good. Or even if you see the highlights of financial stability report, especially in the concept of stress testing, ठीक है, तो वहां पे आपको बताता है वो कि when we put economy into stress, then even after that various banking companies and their asset ratios or their gross NPA still remains under the ambit or under the limit that Reserve Bank of India provides. ठीक है, तो make sure आप लोग अच्छे से पढ़िए at least those reports that are anyways there. तो where can you utilize such type of data, everyone? Or at least where can you utilize these things as suggestions in your descriptive answers? आप लोग इस चीज को कहाँ यूज कर सकते हो? Everyone, ESI छोड़ के अब थोड़ा फाइनेंस में भी जाओ. Yes, correct. Risk management, but risk management, it is about individual banks, but in case of mutual funds, yes, you are right, but overall financial sector stability के context में भी you can always mention these points. ठीक है, it can anyways apply on the overall macroeconomic level. So I hope you understand where can you utilize such type of SEBI regulations as well. चलो, let's move on to next news. तो ESI finance खत्म हो गया. Now let's move on to national and state, and we'll go a little bit faster now. So nationwide awareness campaign for first time voters. Okay, so it is initiative by education as well as information broadcast ministry. अब देखो इस तरीके की न्यूज़ बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. The question which they usually form, especially in phase 1 GA, they'll just give you this, और नाम भी नहीं पूछेंगे, नाम दे देंगे कि मेरा पहला वोट देश के लिए. This initiative, nationwide awareness, has been jointly developed by Education Ministry and what ministry, or even this ministry or what ministry. ठीक है, so please remember the name of the campaign, मेरा पहला वोट देश के लिए, and initiative by Education Ministry as well as Information Broadcasting Ministry. Next is household consumption expenditure survey update and release timeline. तो इतनी बातें चल रही हैं इस अपडेट के बारे में, बट स्टिल इफ यू सी द न्यूज, द होल हाउसहोल्ड कंजम्पशन एक्सपेंडिचर सर्वे हैजंट बीन रिलीज्ड. उसका पूरा डेटा निकलेगा. फुल फाइंडिंग्स विल बी ऑलमोस्ट कम इन जुलाई. ठीक है, जिसमें 23-24 का भी डेटा होगा. Those things are also being collected right now. So this is what the news is. Next is we have this committee on higher education reforms known as Yashpal Committee, formed in 2008. This is nothing but Vodafone Idea's fundraising plan. So Vodafone Idea is also trying to raise 45,000 crores through a mix of equity and debt for expanding their 4G coverage, rolling out 5G networks and enhancing capacity. तभी इसका स्टॉक बढ़ रहा है ऊपर. Next is launch of Swayam Plus by central government. So Swayam, as all of you know, it's a online learning, just like edX like or Coursera like platform where you can access various online courses provided to you by various top rated Indian institutions. Okay, so it is in this context only Education Minister launched Swayam Plus platform, okay, which will be steered by IIT Madras. Okay, it aims to bridge the gap between academia and industry by providing you various new industry-led courses to enhance employability. ठीक है, तो अगर आप यहाँ पर जाओगे, अगर आपको एरोनॉटिकल इंजीनियरिंग में इंटरेस्ट है तो आपको सारे कोर्स मिल जाएंगे यहाँ पे and all those things. Even if you are interested in physics and all those things, you can get those lectures by IIT professors over there. And as you can see, they are all available in 22 regional languages besides English. Accenture will be developing its new technology center in Bhubaneswar, providing services such as cloud, data and AI. Recently, India and Sweden have celebrated its 75 years of diplomatic ties with each other. Next is Election Commission of India to track suspicious digital wallet payments. So as all of you know, that it is usually a traditional practice that a lot of political parties, they provide money to various voters in order to buy votes. Okay, although it's illegal, but it usually happens. So in order to track those activities, what Election Commission is doing, especially in collaboration with NPCI, they are saying if we notice any type of transactions where small amount of money is being transferred from one source to different people in a repetitive fashion, okay, then try to make sure that we nab that personal or nab that political party and penalize them. Okay. Next is government permits tree planting on degraded land for credits. अब देखो ये मैं आपको बताऊंगा नहीं, this we've already done, especially all those people who are there in, let's say, course. So first of all, let me ask all of you what this is about. This is about green credit program. So in green credit program, which ministry will be implementing this program? Everyone who are there in the course, who have already studied sustainable development issues. बढ़िया. So Ministry of Environment and Forest हो गया. Now tell me what this scheme is all about. What are the benefits that you will be accrued over there? कार्बन सिंक इंक्रीज, तो ये तो कॉन्सिक्वेंस हो गया. As I've already told you that various companies have to fulfill their ESG compliances. ठीक है, तो ESG compliances the government will come up with this framework that ESG compliances will be fulfilled via green credit. ठीक है, so every company has to have some green obligations with respect to their ESG frameworks. So if somehow the companies usually do not have compliance with this ESG framework, they can do so via green credit. अब green credit आपको कब मिलेगा? जब आप कुछ activity करोगे which will provide benefit to the environment. ठीक है, ये तो एक तरीका है. But the next way is that you buy it from the person who have done it in access. ठीक है, so let's say company, Tata company, have already done its ESG compliance and they've also done some more activities that have provided them green credit. But Reliance company, for example, were not able to complete their ESG compliance and they need some green credits. Up उस फाइनेंशियल ईयर में टाइम नहीं है तो क्या करें, टाटा से जो एक्सेस ग्रीन क्रेडिट है वो खरीद लेते हैं, सो दैट आर कंप्लायंस इज ऑल्सो डन. ओके, सो इट इज इन दिस कॉन्टेक्स्ट ओनली दिस एक्टिविटी इज बीइंग डिफाइंड कि ग्रीन क्रेडिट पाने के लिए द गवर्नमेंट हैज अलाउड प्लांटिंग ट्रीज ऑन डिग्रेडेड लैंड फॉर ग्रीन क्रेडिट. ठीक है, I hope all of you get the news, what the news wants to say, and it is this, in what context it is saying this. ठीक है, वही सेम चीज़ है इसमें लिखी हुई है, the thing which I have already told you. Next is Prime Minister Modi inaugurates India's first indigenous hydrogen fuel cell ferry. Okay, so ferry cell boat from Kochi. Please remember this. It's a 24-meter catamaran capable of carrying 50 passengers. Next is Nepal India official dialogue silent on landmark Pancheshwar projects. ठीक है, तो recently our foreign secretary as well as his counterpart from Nepal, they both met, okay, and they discussed about various projects. For example, they talked about various Nepali power exports to India, increasing it to 10,000 megawatt over 10 years, but they didn't talk about this Pancheshwar multipurpose project. Okay? And why is this so? Because this Pancheshwar multipurpose project is located in this region of India. यहाँ पर है, and that Mahakali river, as all of you know, it's a little bit disputed. नेपाल ने एक मैप निकाल दिया था ये रीजन अपने मैप में कवर करके, है ना? So that's why both countries were silent in context of that. Next is Modi lays foundation stone for ISRO's launch complex in Tamil Nadu. Okay, so Prime Minister has launched new complex in Tamil Nadu's Thoothukudi district. Okay, so if you see India's map, especially Tamil Nadu, so something like this place is there. ठीक है, जहाँ से श्रीलंका ऐसे आ रहा है, at this place Thoothukudi is there. In this place the new launch complex will be developed, and right now Satish Dhawan's center is right now in over here. Okay, and these were various projects that were inaugurated by the Prime Minister. The projects were 17,300 crores. Okay, first indigenous green water way vessel, which we've discussed just now, outer harbour container terminal at Chidambanar port in Thoothukudi, okay, tourist facilities at lighthouses, railway projects and road projects. Next is Comptroller and Auditor General of India and ICAI. They both collaborate for online courses to strengthen accounting systems in panchayats and municipal bodies. Okay? Next is Enforcement Director has frozen EDS frozen around 123 crores kept in the bank account of NIUM India Private Limited. तो यहाँ पे कंपनी का नाम याद रख लो, upon which the allegation have been there with respect to illegal online loans, gambling and betting applications. International news. So Polish farmers protest EU green policies. Okay? So EU naturally, apart from obviously the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which anyways is also a green project, but उसके अलावा भी बहुत सारे green projects EU has been adopting. So because of which the farmers in EU are not able to, import their grains from Ukraine or other countries. Okay, so that's why they are protesting over there. Next is GS Bank, Goldman Sachs, okay, and Mubadala Investment Company. They both signed $1 billion separately managed account deal. Okay. So this deal will be focusing upon co-investing in private credit opportunities across Asia Pacific, including India. Okay. So what does this tell you? That there will be an increase in FII's funding in India. ठीक है, एशिया पैसिफिक में सबसे बढ़िया मार्केट इस समय कौन सा चल रहा है? इंडिया. नॉट, ठीक है. तो usually what we do, especially in context of analyzing stocks and all those things, but if you look at the overall economy, if you look at in what direction the global economy is trying to go, you also get to understand what you should expect in the future, especially in the coming 5 to 6 years. And this is a long-term capital that they are thinking about. Next is Qualcomm and Jio. They both collaborate for 8000 5G smartphone. Okay. Next is FICCI's National Conclave on Viksit Bharat. Okay, so which will be focusing upon next generation reforms in all the major areas. For example, land, labor, capital, infrastructure, and also they focused upon digital infrastructure. So this national conclave happened in New Delhi. So Coal India Limited and BHEL, they both joined together for a joint venture for ammonium nitrate plant. Okay, so this nitrate plant, in which Coal India will be having 51% stake and BHEL will be having 49%, and it will be established in Odisha. Okay, the annual capacity of this joint venture will be 2000 tons per day. Now comes the most important news. Okay, make sure you understand this news very thoroughly. Amendment of double taxation avoidance agreement between Mauritius and India. Okay, double taxation avoidance agreement, I hope everybody of you remembers. We've discussed it an ample amount of times. What does it mean and what benefit it provides? Anyone? Reduce tax burden as only one side is paid for any company. So that same income should not be taxed by two different countries. ठीक है कि एक बार टैक्सेशन हो, मान लीजिए कोई मॉरिशस का बंदा है, अगर उसने इंडियन इन्वेस्टमेंट्स में if they put their money into Indian equities, okay, so whatever profit that they are generating, okay, एक जगह टैक्स लगे ना यार, या तो इंडिया में लग जाए या मॉरिशस में लग जाए. इंडिया में भी टैक्स दें, फिर मॉरिशस में इनकम बन जाए वो, फिर वहाँ पे भी टैक्स दें. So to avoid such kind of scenario, usually countries do amongst each other डबल टैक्सेशन अवॉइडेंस एग्रीमेंट. दे एग्री अपॉन इट कि चलो मॉरिशस में टैक्स नहीं लगेगा, केवल इंडिया में लगेगा. ठीक है, ऑल दोज थिंग्स. बट बिकॉज ऑफ ऑल दीज थिंग्स, ठीक है, बिकॉज ऑफ वेरियस डबल टैक्सेशन अवॉइडेंस एग्रीमेंट, ठीक है, देर आर अ लॉट ऑफ कंपनीज और देर आर अ लॉट ऑफ कंट्रीज, ठीक है, which have favorable type of treaty agreements amongst each other. अब मान के चलिए, जैसे you guys only tell me that usually आप लोग सोचते होंगे कि मॉरिशस से पैसा क्यों आता है, उस कंट्री के पास तो कुछ नहीं है. ठीक है, जबकि सबसे ज़्यादा टॉप सोर्स ऑफ FDI इट इज फॉर इंडिया एंड इवन सिंगापुर ऑल्सो. चलो सिंगापुर तो यू नो इट्स लाइक अ ह्यूज डेवलप्ड कंट्री, बट व्हाट अबाउट मॉरिशस? है ना, why the huge amount of funds is coming from that country? Because it has huge, let's say, this double taxation avoidance agreement which provide investors a way to avoid taxation. ठीक है, वहां पे कमाई कर लेते हैं इंडिया में और यहाँ पे मॉरिशस में आकर उनको केवल 1-2% टैक्स देना पड़ता है. ठीक है, एंड दिस इज in the Asia Pacific region, but what about in the American region? वहां पर भी एक टेरिटरी है from where a lot of funds are usually funnelized. What is that country? Cayman Islands, very good, and even Panama also, isn't it? तो ये लोग क्या करते हैं, लेट्स से थ्रू पैनामा और मॉरिशस दे वांट टू इन्वेस्ट इन यूएसए, तो यूएसए में डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्ट ना करके दे गो थ्रू दिस, दे एंजॉय द बेनिफिट्स ऑफ टैक्स फ्री पैनामा टेरिटरी एंड दे डू नॉट ऑल्सो गेट टैक्स्ड इन यूएसए बिकॉज बोथ ऑफ दीज कंट्रीज हैव डबल टैक्सेशन अवॉइडेंस एग्रीमेंट. सिमिलरली हेयर ऑल्सो सेम सिचुएशन. तो फिर अगर मैं इन्वेस्टर हूं तो मैं भी क्यों टैक्स दूं यार, मैं फिर ओवरऑल वर्ल्ड घूमता हूं. ठीक है, जिन जिन के पास अच्छी अच्छी ट्रीटी है उस रूट को पकड़ के, ठीक है, अपना पैसा इन्वेस्ट करता हूं. तो नेचुरली दीज कंट्रीज विल बी लाइक कि यार इससे तो बहुत पैसे का लॉस हो रहा है, वी आर नॉट एबल टू टैक्स दीज पीपल, और ये सारे के सारे शॉपिंग पे चले जाते हैं कि कौन सी कंट्री के थ्रू हमारा टैक्स कम लगेगा. तो व्हाट टू डू इन दैट कॉन्टेक्स्ट? सो दे मेट एंड दे डिस्कस्ड अबाउट बेस इरोजन प्रॉफिट शिफ्टिंग अग्रीमेंट. ठीक है, सो इफ यू सी दैट मोस्ट ऑफ द डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज, most of the OECD's countries talked about this proposal of base erosion profit shifting. ठीक है, where as all of you know that अपना current base को कम करके, ठीक है, they avoid tax and they mostly shift their profit to other countries which do not have or do not attract so much taxation. So to avoid these things, okay, what's the news is saying? That Mauritius government is deciding to amend the taxation avoidance agreement with India so that it complies with the provisions of base erosion and profit shifting. That means जो भी practices हो रही थी उनको reduce करने के लिए amendment हो रहा है. और इस amendment में हो क्या रहा है? These two things are being applied upon. The first thing is limitation on benefits rule and principal purpose test rule. So what does the limitation on benefit rule says? So limitation on benefit rule says, first of all, we need to check whether the entity that is taking benefits from this double taxation avoidance agreement, does it really have substantial economic presence in Mauritius or not? और substantial economic presence का मतलब ये नहीं होता कि आपने एक शेल कंपनी स्टार्ट कर दी यहाँ पे और अपना फंड आप यूएस से चला रहे हो. आपका फैक्ट्री यही होना चाहिए, ऑफिस यही होना चाहिए, सारे एक्टिविटीज भी मॉरिशस में होने चाहिए, आप जो यूटिलाइजेशन भी कर रहे हो वो सब इधर ही होना चाहिए. ठीक है, सो दिस इज व्हाट द लिमिटेशन ऑन बेनिफिट्स इज. किसी को confusion is in this thing? Confusion तो नहीं किसी को? ठीक है? And the principal purpose test, as the name suggests, is that your company's activities will be, first of all, it will be put on examination whether you are actually incorporating your company in Mauritius just to do activities in Mauritius only, or do you want to incorporate in Mauritius for tax avoidance purposes. ठीक है? So that is what principal purpose is. What is your principal purpose of incorporating your company in Mauritius? ठीक है? So when these two things will be applicable in the double taxation avoidance agreement, so whenever a company will want to take benefits from these, they need to first make sure that they go on to these two tests first. Okay? Then only they will be provided various benefits accrued under double taxation avoidance agreement. Okay? Is this clear to everyone? क्या समझ में आया क्या? चलो ठीक है. Next is 4 Indian Air Force pilots have been selected for Gaganyaan mission, which we've anyways discussed in the previous sessions also. Prasant Balakrishnan Nayyar, Ajit Krishnan, Angad Pratap, Subhanshu Shukla. Okay, these have been trained at Russia's Yuri Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center. Okay, and this is the final crew, and they will be going in GSLV Mark III. Okay, launch vehicle. Next is Department of Biotechnology have also completed the 10,000 genome project, okay, where they have mapped or they have taken the data of 10,000 different human or Indian population genes, just to map how much diversity is there in the country, because this will enable Department of Biology to formulate various drugs and therapies catering to different genes that are available in the country. Okay? Then Biobank is also established, housing 20,000 blood samples, established at Center for Brain Research, IISc. Okay. Next is newfound obelisk, a third unusual life form. So it is usually assumed that virus is the main life form, that after which usually things go from living to non-living. Okay, but we've also seen that even smaller than virus are viroids. But this new form have also been discovered recently, which ranges in between virus and viroids. ठीक है, तो एक वायरस परेशान करता है, फिर दूसरे वायरॉइड्स निकलते हैं, अब ये तीसरा भी निकल आया. बट चलो, एटलीस्ट थ्रू डिस्कवरी वी विल बी एबल टू आइडेंटिफाई दीज थिंग्स. ठीक है, एंड द नेम ऑफ विच इज ओबेलिस्क्स. अब इसको याद कर लेना, इट्स अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट डिस्कवरी एंड प्लीज रिमेंबर द नेम ऑल्सो. नेक्स्ट इज मेटा's Know What's Real campaign. Meta has launched on platform WhatsApp and Instagram for 8 weeks Know What's Real in context of obviously fake news and fake information, to detect all those things, because as all of you know, by utilizing AI, how much misinformation is usually going on the platforms. Okay. Now Takeda has developed a dengue vaccine initiative in India. Okay. Takeda is based in Japan, and it also in talks with Indian regulators to introduce its dengue vaccine in India. And if this is successful, this will help benefit various, and this will help reduce various deaths in the country associated with dengue. Okay. Next is sports. So Ashi Choksi excelled in women's 50-meter rifle 3 position event during the national shooting selection trials. ठीक है, तो इसको अभी इतना मत मान के चलिए. ठीक है, in case if this event, some event happens in which our athletes, win gold or something like that, then these things become important. Okay. But the most important thing is she achieved a world record score of 597 out of 600 in qualification, surpassing the previous record shared by Jenny Steen of Norway and Sagen Madalena of USA. Next is Sunil Bharti Mittal receives honorary knighthood by the British King in recognition of his contribution to UK-India business relations. Okay. He was also given Padma Bhushan in 2007. New Zealand fast bowler Neil Wagner announced retirement from Test cricket. India's performance in Turkish Women's Cup football tournament. India finishes runner-up in the tournament. In the final, it faced Kosovo. Okay, but in the injury time, Kosovo secured a 1-0 victory. And Manisha Kalyan awarded the best midfielder of the tournament. Okay, so make sure you remember the name. Make sure you remember by which country we were defeated and what was the score. So Pramod Bhagat achievements and goals equaled Chinese badminton icon Lin Das record of 5 world championship titles. Okay, he defeated England's Daniel Bethel in SL3 final, and he is conferred with prestigious Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award in 21. In context of important days, 28th February is celebrated as National Science Day. Okay? And it is to commemorate discovery of Raman effect by Indian physicist Sir C.V. Raman. Okay? And additionally, it is also recognized as Rare Disease Day. So this is all for today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we'll wind up this session. Okay? तो अभी हम लोगों ने जनवरी और फरवरी ख़त्म कर लिया है ना. मेक श्योर यू गाइज प्लीज़ रिवाइज द करंट अफेयर्स. ठीक है, एंड PIB रिवाइज करके चलिए और शॉर्ट नोट्स बना लो. इन केस इफ़ यू बहुत सारी न्यूज़ होती है, वी टेंड टू फॉरगेट दोज थिंग्स एंड वी ऑल्सो नो दैट दीज थिंग्स आर इंपॉर्टेंट. तो मेक श्योर यू प्रिपेयर नोट्स अबाउट दैट. अभी नोट्स बना लोगे तो इट विल बी मच मोर बेनिफिशियल फॉर यू व्हेन द एग्जामिनेशन विल बी नियर. तो वहाँ पे केवल रिवाइज कर रहे हैं. ठीक है, और अभी नोट्स बना लोगे, मेक श्योर यू राइट अबाउट द पॉइंटर्स alongside those notes की where you can utilize it as a data in your descriptive answers as well. ठीक है, जैसे आज भी मैंने बहुत सारी चीज़ें बताई आपको फाइनेंशियल स्टेबिलिटी के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में. आई हैव आल्सो टोल्ड यू व्हाट पॉइंट्स यू कैन यूटिलाइज. ठीक है, तो मेक श्योर यू ऑल्सो राइट अबाउट दीज थिंग्स. जैन रिवाइजिंग सेकेंड टाइम्स, बहुत बढ़िया विराट, गुड. Chalo. Thank you guys for joining. We'll meet in the next session.